Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time zone you're living in, it's time for Sumud. All about humanity, so this right here for everyone. Uplift, amplify, empower everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time zone you're living in, it's time for Sumud.
On today's episode of the Sumud podcast, we uplift, empower, and amplify Libyan American and Chicago-based hip-hop artist Kayem. Known for his storytelling, Kayem has been featured in media such as Rolling Stone, MTV, CNN, and Complex. He has headlined prestigious venues such as the House of Blues in Chicago, SOBs in New York City, the Fillmore in Detroit, the Kennedy Center in DC, and Manchester Academy in the UK. He has also shared the stage or worked with notable artists, including Low Key, Lupe Fiasco, Immortal Technique, and many more. Just to be honest with you, Cam, I just named the ones that I'm big fans of. I know there were many more. A special shout out to Alat Frafer Church. Yes, I did mess up her name, for connecting me to KM. Shout out to her. KM, welcome.
Yo, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
So I'm extremely excited about chatting with you. One thing I found interesting on your IG page, I don't know when you wrote this, so I don't know when you officially came back into the Instagram world, but you said something to the effect of, I'm coming back to basically talk about Palestine again, right? Was that recent or?
Yeah, that was in November. I have a habit of coming out, doing something, and then disappearing. It's been like, whether by my own decision or whether this result of things going around with me, around me with the government or other things, but I've had to pop out, disappear, pop out, disappear. So this is another one of the times where I disappeared. And once you're out and the door's closed, it's easy to keep it closed. But I've been working the whole time. Like I've been creating content, music, everything. I just didn't have the stomach to be on social media. But eventually, with everything going on in Palestine, and October 7th happened, my initial thoughts were, I don't need to really be on there because I'm preaching to the choir, and what difference is it going to make? There's other people to speak. But I realized very quickly, it's not about the result. It's just about what our effort is. We don't make an effort towards something just because of a result. We don't boycott something only if we think we're capable of shutting that brand down. We're just boycotting it because the process itself is important. So that's A. But B, things are just different this time. It's palpable. There's like a tangible change. People are opening their eyes more than ever before. We're not just preaching to the choir, and we are out reaching the masses. So I wanted to be a part of that and just be in community with everybody during this time.
Yeah, a lot of times I think this, people are afraid to post things. Well, what if nobody likes it or nobody sees it? Who cares? If one person sees it, that's good enough. But at least there's a documented record that you did something later on in life, right? When you have kids or whatever, that's memorialized forever. So you have a fascinating story growing up. I can't wait to kind of get into this. Were you born in Kentucky or did you move to Kentucky at a young age?
So I moved to Kentucky at a very young age. My father was a political prisoner in Libya. He was in jail for 5 years, tortured, shared a jail cell with his father, and he escaped jail. And subsequently lived on the run. So we bounced around. We lived in Sudan, Egypt, bounced around Africa for a while, eventually came to the States. And I was actually born in Tucson, Arizona. We didn't really live there. Just like my brother was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, we didn't really live there. This was during a time of our life where father was on the run. We're trying to figure out where we want to put our roots, and we're just bouncing around place to place. And then after a couple of years, my father, who was part of a group of political dissidents who all opposed the regime there, they kind of founded this community in Lexington, Kentucky, which is where I spent my childhood.
Got it. And can you, if you're okay with it, just a 30-second overview of what happened in Libya? Because I was having a conversation with somebody much younger the other day, and I mentioned Gaddafi, and they're like, "Who?" And I'm like, "Wow, you got to read a little more here."
I actually prefer the who to what's going on now, because now there's revisionist history, right? Gaddafi was a dictator who people don't know was put into power in Libya in a bloodless coup by the CIA in 1969. So he actually was an invention of the United States initially. He was brutal. He was ruthless. He loved to be loved by outsiders. So he'd go to other countries and maybe throw some money or build a hotel or build a masjid or something. So a lot of other countries have a positive kind of impression of him. He did beef with America when in the Reagan years. In 2004, the United States lifted sanctions and became a puppet for the United States at that point. And subsequently, fell during the revolution in 2011, where his people rose up against him. Revisionist history now shows that, he was anti-America, and that's why, and they outed him, even though the United States actually initially took his side during the revolution. Once they saw the tides turning, they just joined on, the winning team. But he was brutal. The Libya at that time, 1 out of 5 people worked for government intelligence. There was spies everywhere, eyes and ears everywhere. It's the reason why we were on the run. It's the reason why, to this day, my legal name is just a made up fake name. It's not my real last name. It's the reason why we had to go to Lexington, Kentucky, where there's no Libyans and there was no brown people growing up, because we didn't want to be, around spies. So, right now there's a lot of revisionist history because we kind of think basic and say if America did something, then the opposite has to be true. We don't really have nuance. And United States foreign policy is crappy. There's no way around it. And it doesn't mean that their intentions are good, but sometimes something lines up. And there's a crowd now where if the United States came in and lifted the occupation in Palestine, they would be against that because the United States did it. So Gaddafi was a brutal dictator. You can say anything you want about made up stories about gold dinar or anything. So there's a common belief. People say he wanted to unite Africa. He perpetuated a lot of wars in Africa, a lot of civil wars. He funded the government side and the rebel side. He didn't want to unite Africa. He was down to rule Africa. And there's a difference. It comes out of narcissism and control and power, not from a place of helping people. He tried to be the leader of the pan-Arab movement, pan-Muslim movement, pan-African movement. He would take whoever would have him to lead. So, good riddance.
Yeah, absolutely. Good riddance. And your father, you mentioned, was a political prisoner who quite literally, just for the audience, escaped prison.
Literally,
and quite literally, right? So he didn't escape getting into prison. He was in prison and escaped.
No, he escaped. He had,
Yeah.
as a kid, I thought that his back looked like a roadmap to me. It was all scarred up, lines all up and down his back from torture, and also from part of his escape where he had to dig under this fence and it, cut up his back. But no, he literally escaped jail and hid under palm trees with helicopters overhead. He hid in the mountains for a while, and he carved his name and date in the side of a mountain. And I got to witness that when I went to Libya after the revolution and kind of touch those words and reconnect with my father, who passed away when I was young. So yeah, he quite literally escaped.
Oh wow, that's powerful. Did you take pictures of it? And do you
I
have
took
it?
pictures. We actually filmed my first visit to Libya. A documentary was filmed called Sing Freedom. So it was weird because I had 7-person film crew catching my most vulnerable moments of meeting my family and all the emotions. It came on TV at the time on a network called OSN, which is prevalent in the Gulf region. And I just finally have the rights now to release it. I've been working on this for years and years and years. And even though it's a few years old, I'm going to just put it out on YouTube later this year. So I'm looking forward to sharing that.
Let me tell you, I'm pretty good at doing research. I could not find the movie anywhere, and I asked a lot for it as well. She couldn't find it, but I did see clips, and the clip. And I'm glad you brought up the movie because one of the clips, I think, if I remember correctly, you were telling them America doesn't accept me, but maybe Libya doesn't accept me either, and the whole crowd or group of people of your relatives said, "No, you are Libyan," kind of thing. And it took me back to when I would go to Palestine, right? Because I wasn't American enough. When I went to Palestine, I was definitely not Palestinian enough, right? So I felt that in my core.
For sure, man. It's always a kind of battle of home and where is home. I had a whole kind of concert series about the concept of home. And, here we're otherized. And when we go to our homeland, I don't care if you dress exactly the same as everybody else. They know as soon as you step off the plane, you're not from there. About the way you carry yourself, the way you walk, your energy might be different. And so I finally kind of came to the conclusion that maybe home isn't a physical place and maybe it's a mental place, and it's not a place. Maybe it's a people, and there's certain people that when I'm around them, I feel home. And these are the people that I can be vulnerable with, safe with. And that could be, in a physical place or if they're all in Lexington, then that moment, Lexington feels like home. But if I'm visiting Lexington, the people I grew up with aren't there, it's just a place I spent a lot of time in. So I don't know. The concept of home is shifting.
Yeah, I think just to take it a step further from mental to emotional, because when you are around those people that you love, there is an emotional aspect that takes you back home, right?
Hmm.
There are certain people I meet, for example, that take me back home to my grandmother. They may not know
Yes.
it, but I feel it. Like I feel that emotion. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's
Absolutely.
pretty powerful. And just one thing about Gaddafi, and I can stop talking about him, hopefully forever. The He also, your uncle, who you're named after, if I'm not mistaken, was
Hmm.
actually assassinated by him. Is that correct?
Yeah, I had two uncles. There was in the 80s, there was the biggest assassination attempt in the history of Libya. This is after this assassination attempt, they built a notorious prison called Abu Salim prison. This prison was famous for in the early 90s, they killed 1,200 political prisoners at once. It was a massacre in the jail. But that prison being built, where all the rest of my uncles spent up to 18 years, was because in the 80s, a group of people, 15 people, infiltrated Bab al Azizia, which was Gaddafi's fortress, in an assassination attempt. So my two uncles were killed, and that me and my brother are named after. And we didn't know this growing up. We didn't know until after the revolution. But in 2011, when people actually got to go into Bab al Azizia and the fortress, they found their bodies in a freezer. So Gaddafi had been holding on to them all those years. He's notorious for being kind of superstitious and scared. I don't know if he thought they'd haunt him or something, but he had their bodies in a freezer.
That's a lot. That's a lot to take in. And at what age did you know or hear of that experience with your uncle?
I don't, to be honest, I don't ever remember not being conscious of it. You know, it wasn't our whole story. It was not something that was like unveiled to me. It was paramount to our existence because how we grew up, we didn't come to America with intentions of staying. We always said lemon rojo when we returned. We always thought next year, the next year, the next year. When I was younger, we had an active like military, like they were trying to forcibly um, change the regime there. As time changed and these other avenues like diplomacy became normal, they tried, those avenues. So we had a lot of families that I grew up on. We used to live on one street, Medlock Road, a bunch of families sharing duplexes, and there was like families that had a box of good china. Like these were the dishes. Don't unpack them. This is for like when we go back home. Our parents had no like idea that we'd grow into adulthood in the United States. So our whole story, my father's story, it was always prevalent in the household.
Yeah, it's equivalent to the Palestinian key. I'm sure you've seen the
Yeah.
key where it says we're going to go back home. So I can feel that. So you grew up in Kentucky. If I remember in your music, you mentioned that you moved to Kentucky where there wasn't so many brown people
Hmm.
because of spies, fears of spies. But you also learned that in Kentucky there were still spies or people who would turn on you. Can you elaborate on that a little bit of that experience? Okay, just so you know, for
um,
everybody listening, really quick, Cam, and I've been rocking your music, no joke, every time I work out for like 3 days straight or 4 days, whatever
oh
it's
man,
been. Just so you know, so I've I got a lot of questions.
I can't wait for y'all to hear all the new stuff. I probably should have sent you some new stuff just to hear it before, but um, yeah, I don't want to go into too much detail because now like water's under the bridge and there's relationships and people connected. But we were part of an organization with the intentions of regime change, and there were people within that organization that really were working for the government and for the other side, and they would do dangerous things like put our the name. Some people, the people that I grew up around were all in exile, so they didn't go to Libya. We never went to Libya growing up. We didn't spend summers in Libya. We didn't do any of that, and we had no connection. Like I have one of my kind of uncles that I grew up around. His brother died. I'm sorry, his father died. He called a brother back home to send condolences, and the brother who accepted the phone call went to prison for like 4 years. So we didn't really have any connection. And it's crazy because after the revolution, when our community went back home, we realized they kind of were in this time capsule. So even the slang, like when I'd go and I'd start speaking, people are looking at me like, bro, what are these words? Imagine somebody in America coming out of a time capsule and like, yo, you jive turkeys. Da, 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 da. We were just in that time capsule, even the food we ate, everything. So um, we didn't go, but some people would send their wives or their wives to take their children and stuff because there's no way they could get past authority. So we would have spies who would blast lists and even include women's names and children's names. That was dangerous. And yeah, it's just a different upbringing. My father's name, the name that he knows, that my mom knows him by, the name that everybody calls him, that I knew in my entire life, is not his biological name, his given name. And it was I had to kind of flip my mind, because when I met his family in Libya, they'd always referred to him by his birth name. It always took me a second to adjust. But I remember one time we were looking for him, and I was younger. It wasn't like cell phones weren't prevalent at this time. So my mom just pulled out to the mosque, to the masjid, to see if he's in there, and he wasn't. And I came out and I told my mom, I was probably like 6, and I was like, I asked for him, they didn't know. So then I asked for it, and I used like his real name. Maybe they knew him by that name. And I got, my mom started yelling. She was so upset. No, don't you use that name, da, 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 And it's like, that was so normal for us. But looking back, like, bro, I'm 6 years old, the pressure of like spies and people catching us. Like, I didn't know that it wasn't normal, because it wasn't just my family. Like, all the families that I grew up with also had similar stories, also had the oldest children didn't have baby photos because they were in Paris and found out that assassins were on their way, and they had to drop everything and leave the house within 10 minutes and stuff like that. All those stories were very prevalent and common. So I didn't really realize until I got older and out of my bubble that it's kind of crazy to look back on.
So do you have trouble trusting people till this day because of that? I mean, there has to be a bit of paranoia is probably a strong word, but a concern that, can I trust these individuals around me?
So I would say I'm a very trusting person. I do actually really, really trust people, and I always see good in people too much. So I wouldn't say I have trouble trusting people, but I do have to, like, my family knows, like, for sure, I can't sit with my back to the door in a restaurant and stuff. Me and my brothers just went to Montreal. We took my mom, and it's like our first time, like, just the 4 of us sitting somewhere. I remember us going to a restaurant, and we kind of like, we're laughing about seating arrangement, because we're like, oh, we all have to sit facing the door. Like, how are we going to do this? Me and my little brother would take turns sitting with our back to the door. Like, just little, quirks like that. I'm also conscious of stuff, but I'm very trusting, and I've had experiences post the Libya stuff with FBI and Department of Defense, and a best friend of mine that we were really close. Like, he had surgery and lived in our house. He was at my house, my family home without us and stuff. And we had a falling out because over time I just was suspicious that he was, a spy, and eventually had a falling out because of it, because I was sharing my mind. And like 10 years later, we got like confirmation of that from a newspaper article. So I've had like a lot of these types of, maybe not 10 years later, 6 years later, I've had these type of experiences growing up, but I still try to always be trusting in people, and see the best in people, and not let it kind of corrupt me, but I'm conscious.
Yeah, it's a fascinating dichotomy, because just in messaging you, first of all, for everybody to know, he's like the nicest dude you'll ever meet. Just
Oh,
just shout out to you. You're super nice. But you're private as well. I can, there's,
mm-hmm.
I'm going to say a little shy, a little private, maybe, but then your music is just, you put it all out there. Right. And it fascinates
Yeah.
me. That's like two different individuals almost coming
Yeah.
out of your shell, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I think when you do anything public, I think about this in social media a lot. Like, everything that I do is authentic. Everything that I do is 100% real and true. I would never fake the funk, but that doesn't mean it's like all of me. Nobody is entitled to anybody else's whole life. So I can share everything that I share is real, but it's like the things that I want to share, and I can keep some stuff for myself. But with that, I'm comfortable in certain contexts being very vulnerable and very open. Like I said, we had cameras in my face entering the country that we dreamed of going to, my whole life. I'm like ugly crying on camera. And then I have no problem, making music that's extremely vulnerable and personal and raw, and, had recording sessions that were even hard to physically get through. But yeah, in other ways, like, I'm super private, and I don't want people, I'm private for other people's business too. Like, I don't want to know everything about what everybody else thinks. I just want to have like a good impression of everybody, and keep it moving. I think that's why IG is a little bit better. I don't know, man. The generation, I don't know if you're on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook, but just from hearing from my people in my community and stuff, it's like too much drama just knowing everybody's written opinion about everything. Like I don't need to know. It's all good.
Yeah. That's why you just basically do what I do. You post and then walk away, and then you
Yeah.
don't read anything
Yeah.
after that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not on there like consuming all day.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to talk about your upbringing in Kentucky, majority white, obviously, but you had your Libyan crew or your Libyan family
Yeah.
close by.
Well, I wouldn't say
How-
majority white. It wasn't brown, but my community is a black community, and the Mexican community is a black community. There's black and there's white. There just wasn't anything other than that. So for us
Gotcha.
growing up, they're just like either they just assume you're mixed or just like, what are you, But they didn't know about other types of people. We didn't even have Latinos like that growing up. It was literally just black people, white people, and mixed people. That's it.
Yeah. So I spent a lot of time when I was young in the South, in Southern Virginia, and I was the only Arab and the only Muslim in my school. So, I mean, the
Wow.
diversity was literally different shades of white, like no joke. And I was there. So that experience, and I kind of felt for you. How did you adapt? How did you cope? Because sometimes people just put their heads in the books, kind of focus on their school or whatever
Mhm.
it may be. But then some kind of go the other direction, gets in a lot of trouble. That's what I did when I was younger. Got in a lot of trouble. Where did you land?
I mean, first of all, I was really grateful and maybe privileged in ways that someone like you may not have been, that I had this community that I was embedded in, right? So my friend circle wasn't limited to who I went to school with, right? Or even where I lived, because we had this network of Libyan dissidents in every city. We just grew up. Anytime it was a 3-day weekend, we're gonna drive to Michigan or Atlanta or Pittsburgh and stay with family. We knew people everywhere, so I had friends everywhere. So I wasn't limited to just who we knew in school. Um, and then I had some of the schools I went to had other like kids that I knew, like Libyan kids or whatever. Some didn't. And then I was just, we're African, and my family's Amazigh too. So that's like, for people who aren't familiar, like indigenous North Africans. They're not Arabs. They have their own language. They live kind of dispersed. They're in Libya, Morocco, uh, Niger, Tunisia, Mali, Algeria. So, as far as like within school programs, honestly, I was just in African American programs. I was in ACE Academy and Upward Bound and all that stuff growing up. Um, and I think there were a lot of instances of racism. Of course, there's overt racism, but there's even stuff that I didn't really think about and didn't notice until I was older, looking back, like certain coaches or stuff. Um, just realizing, wow, like that dude was super racist. But I also I didn't feel like I was alone on the island. I didn't really care. I had people that had my back, and it was all good.
But you were always in the principal's office, from what I heard. Is
Yeah,
that
I actually
right?
broke in middle school. Yeah, sixth grade, I broke the record for infractions. That's like when you get written up. I had like 67 or something like that. That was like a school record at the school that I went to. Um, Eighth grade, and for me, people like relive their high school years. For me, like middle school was my favorite years, and like I missed the last 2 weeks of middle school, eighth grade, because I was suspended. I never got to have that like goodbye moment with everybody. I was always in trouble, but looking back at it, um, even though I was always in trouble, I always was good hearted. I don't know if this makes sense. Like I never bullied anybody. I was still the dude where if somebody else was getting made fun of or he was like a little nerd and people give him a hard time, I would bring him in and look out for him or whatever. So I never had the type of like trouble to bring other people down, if that makes sense. It's just kind of riffraff type stuff or getting old too quick type stuff.
And you looked at me pretty intently when you said nerd. I think that was a
No,
shot at me,
I
but
was looking at you. No,
it's
I
all
was
good.
not looking at you. I commented before we started recording that I had only seen your face, and I know you built like the linebacker, so I'm not messing with you.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Um, so you're just you're so good at speaking, and obviously you're great at writing. What kind of student were you? Did you? Because I think your father had that skill, right? Your father, I
Mhm.
believe, if it's accurate to say, he was a poet, and I'm
Yes.
guessing that's where you got it right from, most likely. But how are you navigating school?
Yeah, I would say I got it from him gene wise, right? But he wasn't a poet in English, but he was a poet. He also, his job when we were in the United States was just the editor of the magazine of the opposition party, right? So he was a writer, and I was around that growing up. You know, our I'm gonna use the term uncles and aunts, but you know what I mean. It's like our amos and khalas, the people I grew up with that aren't blood family, but we're closer to them than blood family. These are the people that we went through deaths together and sacrificed together, and we were cut off from our family back home. This is like stronger than blood family, but all of them too were writers and singers. Like all our weddings and stuff growing up, even our music that we listened to was recordings from, you know, my uncles and aunts. Like, and we'd be at weddings, like they're on the keyboard, they're on the oud, they're on the zukra, and on the recorder, and we're just like, they're singing songs about living in ghurba, like living in exile and freedom and like sad emotional stuff at these happy times. But you know, art with the message was always embedded for me, and I didn't consciously think about it like that. It's not like I was a kid. I was like, I want to make music and I want to be like them. It was just normal. I didn't think twice about it. That's just what we knew. Um, so for me, I was always into writing. As a student, um, I didn't get good grades mostly because I just had a lot of zeros. You know, if we had an essay, I was killing the essay. I would get A's on my essays and I would get A's on my tests. I never studied, but I just, you know, I didn't care. I was really unfocused. I got zero. All their homework was zeros. I passed seventh grade. I had to go to summer school. I got like all D's and an F in seventh grade. Elementary school, I had great, like straight A's. You know, I can remember like other my friends tell me, my mom would be like, "Why aren't you more like him?" Da da da. But I think once I got to a certain age and was into other stuff, um, I let it hold me back, and I didn't build like good study habits. You know, so you can only live so long and get by on like being naturally smart. You can do that in middle school and maybe even in high school or early years, but at some point, like you can't just walk into a calculus class or like chemistry and be like, "Oh, I'm smart. I'm just going to take this test." So yeah, I wasn't the best student, but I was always adept at writing.
So were you writing though, music, or anything like when you were in school? I'm just it fascinates me. Like, when do you realize you got game? I think that's really what my
I
question is.
start,
Like, was it like
I,
sixth grade? You like, yeah.
it was sixth grade. I started writing music in sixth grade, and I can't share the I can't share the lyrics, but me and my cousins were like writing songs, and you know, my mom came in and saw the notebook, and we were mixing in a couple of English terms and Arabic terms. It was definitely not content that sixth graders should be talking about. Um, but you know, by seventh grade, I was just writing like notebooks, you know, of music.
Do you still have those notebooks?
I don't, man. I wish I did. I would pay a lot of money just to hold on to them, but you know, they're just regular sheet notebooks. Like they're not lasting like that.
Yeah, yeah, it happens. Um, and talk to me about after you graduated high school. Did you actually go to Kentucky? Uh,
Hmm. I
the you
did.
did? Okay. What was your major?
I
What did you
did.
study there?
My major was journalism, and I actually took a tour when I was in high school. I took a tour of Columbia University. I made a joke the other day because I saw now they have the Columbia University alumni doing the third encampment now in support of Palestine. And I was like, yo, I'm not an alumni, but like I took a tour at the school once. Do I count? You know, but once I realized just how like you go to journalism school there, it's like an actual full time gig. Like you got to be dedicated. I wasn't really about that life. I was just going to school to get a degree, and I was doing music at that time. And I was like kind of trying to keep it secret. And I was doing, I was young. I was doing a tour with some, you know, this rapper named Tech Nine and some others, and I would like go to class, you know, finish class. I'll go drive to Kentucky's pretty central, so I'll go drive to Cleveland or Atlanta or whatever. Finish my show by like 1 a.m. and drive back in the morning for class. And eventually, you know, I had to tell my mom like, "Yo, this is what I'm doing." Like, I couldn't like, I don't know why I was keeping it to myself. I had to keep it secret. And she was cool, but she was like, "You just have to get your degree. You have to get, you know, I don't care." So I was in school. I got my degree. Journalism wasn't really what I thought it would be, and I was really disillusioned by it. Um, I thought it was gonna like expand my ability to write and message. And it's like the first day at journalism school, the lady's like, "All right, we know you took your ACTs and your SATs, you know, big words. So what? don't use them. The average American reads at a third grade reading level, and it just felt like math. They're just teaching us how to dumb down everything and break it down. But it has taught me how to be like concise and make things palatable for people. Even musically, like I used to gravitate towards like super complex rhymes and stuff, and now I have to kind of tell myself to make it a little bit easier for people to digest, and I guess it helped me in that way.
Well, now journalism, the first thing they teach you is that the world started on October 7th. So it's it's gotten worse. It hasn't gotten better for sure.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I went to journalism school, and I can't say that I recommend it for anybody at this point. I feel like you don't have to learn to do it the way it's traditionally done, and there's so many people like yourself who don't have to go the traditional route and can create their own avenue and create their own voice and make things happen.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so you're a Wildcat. I'm assuming you're all about Kentucky basketball. I just want to throw that out there. So Calipari left, but we could talk about that offline a little bit later. But as you were
I
working on
am a
your
big
music,
fan. Yeah.
as you were working on your music, some of the biggest influences for you that really inspired you, who were they?
Man, that's a very common question, and um, I can't say that I like consciously think of certain artists, but my oldest memories in life are like sitting back in my uncle's car. And in this context, when I say uncles, I mean my blood uncles, because I had three uncles, my mom's brothers, that grew up with us in the house. So they grew up like my older brothers, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like my oldest memories are sitting and they're playing like Tupac and um, you know, whatever. Not, I mean, Tupac was number one for all the Libyans. Like Libyans in Lexington is Tupac, or not, till this day. Like kids that are born in like 2006 and stuff are listening to Pac. So, um, I just always felt even as a youngster, I had to like listen to something that meant something. It doesn't mean that it had to be about like freedom or anything political, but it just had to like mean something, even if it was a love song. But it just had to come um, with some type of sincerity. I always gravitated towards that, and even in movies and stuff that I consume, and I always kind of gravitated towards like darker content. Even to this day, when I'm watching film, I'm not listening to a lot of. Not that I said I don't respect it or anything like that. Like I know how everything is today, hater, hater. I'm just saying, me personally, I'm not listening to a bunch of happy-go-lucky stuff and dance music and stuff. I'm usually listening to something that's gonna provoke a feeling within me.
So that makes sense, and I appreciate that answer because when I was doing my research on you, it felt like people were trying to put you into a box. He's a political rapper. He's a Muslim rapper. He's whatever type of artist that they're trying to put you in, and you keep saying, "Nah, that I am me, and I'm going to be me," and you all don't get to define it. Is that right?
It's absolutely right. And you know what's really crazy? And people who come to my shows, they know what's up, because my concert is like the real me. And you'll get the real experience. And we're gonna laugh together, we're gonna cry together, and they're gonna hear all type of music that I make that I haven't released. I'm notorious for just not releasing the music. Um, but the song that really put me on the map and made me be able to do this for a living was a song called "Can't Take Our Freedom" with Loki,
Yep.
who was big in the UK, and now he still puts out music, but he's also known just for his commentary and stuff now. But for me, it wasn't like a political song. I was just making a song to like raise awareness about what was going on back home in Libya, and I made it kind of generic to apply to a lot of situations. And because of that, I ended up doing a lot of interviews for news outlets, not just music outlets. And then it kind of boxed me into where I was like, we would have these huge outlets wanting to interview me. And if it was a news outlet, I got to the point I was like, I don't even want to do that, because now I'm just like in this box. So I had Can't Take Our Freedom. And a few years later, I made Medlock Road, which wasn't political, but it was really like intense and personal. So then my years that I'm off the map and I'm ghost, I'm making a whole different genres, of music, like stuff that people are going to hear me and be like, yo, that's not what we expected, unless they've been to my shows. And I was like, it's okay, I'm allowed to make some more lighthearted things, and then I'll still have meaningful stuff in it, but I have songs that'll expand the message. A song like Medlock Road that I put out with, which is it's 5 minutes and it's all rap. Like, it's not built to do streaming numbers. It's the kind of song where if you make it, it'll make somebody really appreciate you and have a connection, but it's not going to spread. It's not built for that. So I gave myself permission. I was like, it's okay. You know, I'll make some streaming songs. I'm going to make some minute and a half catchy songs. And it's like, the second I do that, now the world is ready for like the Can't Take Our Freedom type of songs. Now everybody's on that, the Hens Hall, you know, revolution. Da, da, da. I'm like, okay, my timing is flip flopped a little bit. It's ironic, but I'm happy that the world is in that position right now. Not happy for the causes of it, but I'm happy that people are opening their eyes and ears.
Yeah, you were ahead of your time. I mean, that's just the reality. At least I think you're ahead of your time.
I like to think that, and then I get humbled to remember, you know, there's so many people decades and centuries before me that did it too, you know, but it's just on a popular level, this is what people are ready to receive.
Okay. Fair enough. And speaking of Medlock Road, that's the one. Both the one with Low Key and the one that you were doing on Medlock Road is the ones I kept playing. So I can't wait for your new music. I'm a little hurt you didn't send me music ahead of time, but I may ask you to
I
freestyle.
didn't think of it.
We'll get to that later. I want you to know that just for the audience, you had you lost your father in a tragic accident, a drowning incident, I believe, where he was trying to save. Was it your younger brother? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
It was. So, and I'm going to read it, and I'll tell you why it was impactful for me. Because you were there, you witnessed it, right? And you said, and when my
Yes.
pops had just died, it was a shot to my pride because I was right by his side. I just stood there, hands in my pocket, and cried. Facing these feelings for the first time, I've had them locked up inside. So my father died of a massive heart attack. And the only difference is, and not many people know this, is he was in my arms the whole time. So from his last second, it was my eyes were locked in his eyes. So when I read that, I was like, I got to bring this up because it just, that's why I kept replaying it. If I'm going to be honest with you, I was like, man, if I had the words back then, those were the words.
How old were you?
16.
Wow. Yeah, that's heavy. I mean, yeah, you see like your hero and like the Superman, he like escaped jail, he did so much, he lived his whole life on principle. You know, we never grew up caring about success or money or anything material. Everything he did had meaning. Poems he wrote, articles he wrote and edited, all the relationships he built. And he literally, I mean, what more dignified way is there to pass? Like, he saved my younger brother's life and sacrificed his own in the process. And you're just kind of sitting there, like, you know, I remember seeing him on the kind of laid out on the beach and this pregnant woman giving him CPR. And you're just like, what am I doing? Like, I'm just there. You know, there was no, you know, I was 9 years old, so there wasn't a lot for me to do. But that doesn't negate like the feeling of just weakness and powerlessness.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, like for me, the police officers arrived before the ambulance, and the police officers just watched with their hands in their pocket, and just didn't do anything, and didn't jump in to help or anything. So I can the feeling of helplessness. That's what I felt. Did that experience and what happened to your dad? Did that push you more towards your music or farther away from your music for a period of time?
You know, I wasn't doing music yet because I was so young, so I wasn't really thinking in that mind. But it did shape everything about me because in some ways he raised me better in his absence than in his presence. I think about it a lot. Like, what if he was around? Like, maybe I've been just another little shit. The way I was with my mom, like sometimes talking back, causing all type of drama and problems and stuff. If my father was around, like, would I have been the same? I don't know, but I thought about his legacy a lot. I always thought about his legacy and how everybody knew him in any city or state I went to, and how I had to like live up to that. So even though I was getting in trouble, I still had like this macro vision of who I wanted to be and what type of person I wanted to be and what type of reputation I wanted to keep. So even at a young age, I was, you know, really conscious of that. And we were just navigating it together. Like, we didn't have the emotional tools. You know, even my mom, like, she didn't have the emotional tools that she has now. Like, my mom was super young and she went to college here in the States and stuff. But like, I can remember like when nobody like told me that my father passed away. Like, I can remember we were visiting family friends in Florida, and they went to the hospital, and I remember my mom, walking into the home and just her face and the breakdown. It's like we knew. It's not like we had this official talk of like, he's not here anymore, ABC. But I was like prepared in the sense that I was blessed. As Muslims, we believe in nasib, which is like fate, and that everything's written. And I think about it a lot, like even at that young age, because you get to questioning what if, and I'm sure my brother had an even harder times with what if. But for me, I knew that was his day, that was his time, as written. And if it didn't happen that way, it would have happened a different way. And having at least that nugget given to me at 9 years old just helped me move forward.
Did you feel like you grew up faster at that point, or you were sort of the you had to step up as one of the men in the family, or?
Yeah, I mean, I know it's like taboo to even use this phrase now, but yeah, I felt like I had to be the man of the house. You know what I mean? And so my younger siblings, I couldn't just be big bro. Like, I needed to do something. And all of us, we learned, we were at that point, my mom, like, we didn't have money when my father was alive, right? He just worked for his like opposition magazine. We didn't have money. So imagine when he's gone now, like, what are we going to do? So my mom went back to school with 3 boys, you know what I mean? And all our practices and everything. I'm really proud of her too, because I remember when she started school, she used to ask us like, oh, how do you spell Will? Is it W-I-L-L or W-E-L-L, And then fast forward, she graduated valedictorian. She gave the speech at her college graduation. So, she was great and she killed it. But for us, like that moment, that time when our dad's gone and now our mom, time-wise, is at work or at school a lot, like we learned to cook meals and be super independent and hold the house down and run errands and do stuff, really young. I was like slanging, not drugs. I was like selling like random stuff at the flea market. You know what I mean? I had like fake little, one of the older cousins would go to New York, Canal Street. He'd bring like little fake Louis Vuittons and stuff. I'd be going to like gas station parking lots. I'm a kid, but I'm just selling things, trying to get by, trying to help out, So, yeah, we definitely grew up fast. And then also everybody, like my generation, the Libyans, especially the guys just over me, were like all in the streets at that time. So all of them were in jail or locked up or shot or whatever. And we were just kind of navigating life and trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Have you thought about writing a book? And sorry if I'm revealing something that I shouldn't be asking, but have you thought about writing a book about your dad's life, his legacy, what he went through, just for the future generations to hear it?
I have a lot. And, if you say about, have you thought about starting this project? I've probably started it. And my problem is finishing projects, but I have like chapters and stuff that I've put together. And I have like an opening of the book, that I've put together, because even just his story of escaping prison is like a Hollywood movie in itself, I hope that I get the discipline one day to finish that book. And I also started working on an oral project of the people of that political dissident community, because they all have crazy, crazy stories. Those 15 people that I told you infiltrated Bab el-Azizia with my uncles, like 2 of them are alive to this day. Like, they were there, you know what I mean? And everybody had assassination attempts on them and just all type of crazy stories. So I started an oral history. I didn't finish that. And I pray that I get the discipline. I think I've kind of just been discouraged over time, especially just Libya was like forefront of my life, my whole life. And now there's just so much revisionist history and misinformation. It's like you can't even say the word without 9 out of 10 people who couldn't name 3 cities in the country lecturing you condescendingly and teaching you about your country. So I don't know, probably discouraged. But the point about my father, I probably do need to pick that up. I'm glad you put it in my ear.
So if you need an accountability brother, I got you. I can check in with you every month if you want, just to make sure that you're doing it.
Yeah, I absolutely need that, but be ready to be disappointed.
It's all good. It's all good.
I'm trying to learn. I'm in my phase, even with music, and I've learned this, and I think it's common with people to have, and it's not a cop out, but I just know it is common with people also to have ADHD, but um, a perfectionism. It's another reason why I have a million songs and I only have a handful of songs out. And my manager used to always tell me, he's like, bro, I don't know anybody that's touring as much as you. Like the amount of shows you do compared to the amount of songs you put out, it doesn't make sense. Like nobody's doing that. And it's another reason why I don't put out songs. I'll sit on them too long, or I'm overthinking the campaign. And I was actually ready this year. I had a release date and campaign and stuff that I was going to use to put out my music. But stuff is happening right now, and it's not an appropriate time for me. So I'm not trying to put out music until I feel that the time is appropriate. I haven't even been doing shows. I have my first show in Chicago June 14th, and I'm only doing it because the organization that's putting it on and the space that it's in are all places put together with intention that I feel like it's for a good cause. Like we're not just out there kind of partying. It's for this creative hub that's opening in the south side of Chicago that has been denied a lot of infrastructure and development by the city of Chicago. And it's put on by this organization called IMAN, Inner City Muslim Action Network. They're very famous, especially in Chicago, winners of all type of awards and grants, and MacArthur Genius Grant. And they provide health clinics, mental health clinics, dental clinics in the south side of Chicago. They got all the little corner stores to provide fresh produce. They open a fresh produce market. They got a green reentry program where they take formerly incarcerated individuals, men and women, give them housing, give them stipends for 18 months, teach them soft skills and life skills, but also get them certified in like HVAC or plumbing. They also are famous for a music festival they used to put out, taking it to the streets. So the combination of being with that organization and the cause, I'm doing that show. But I'm really excited to release music. I can't wait to show people what I'm doing, especially now on IG. You talking about IG, like I got a lot of new people that follow me that really don't even know my music like that. They just follow me because of commentary. So I'm looking forward to it, but I just want to wait till I feel like it's an appropriate time. And right now is not the time to be like, hey guys, like and subscribe, So hopefully we can make some huge steps in Palestine and Sudan and the like, and see what happens moving forward.
Yeah, I actually had a theory because I noticed that you stopped working on music. Both of the songs you put out were so deep, and it just felt like a piece of you was put out every time. So I just assumed like that's a intense process, an emotional process for you to put out music. So that was my assumption that it's and maybe I was overthinking, but your music is deep, right? So
yeah, I mean those songs did take a lot out of me emotionally, and it's like finishing a 12-round fight afterwards. But I have a lot of songs now. Like I've been working on music, and I have some that are also deep, but I have a lot that are just fun or about Chicago or about something silly. And I want to show all those parts of me. And it's like I spent so much time trying to get away from this like intense, overly message-based, like political music to kind of showcase other stuff I can do, only to kind of get to this moment now where it's like that music is absorbed better.
yeah. So I just want to pivot slightly. You had a unique experience that also had you stop playing music or working on music for a while. And I don't know the full story, but you were placed on a no-fly list. I'm just going to hand it over to you and tell us what happened there.
So yeah, I was placed on a no-fly list, which put my career to a halt because it was more than just a no-fly list. This was a time when we were under intense surveillance, and I was going through perpetual harassment and detainments. And the FBI was like playing with us at the time. They would come to the house sometimes, knock on the door. And when I was younger, and I mentioned to you having a friend who was like gathering intelligence, and even as I started becoming suspicious of him, I didn't care because I was like, oh, well, he's going to see the truth and blah, 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 blah. We're real naive, especially as Muslims when FBI agents and stuff come to our homes. We're like, come in, have some tea. Like, that's what we know. Like, we just know, you know, and really, I mean, it's not exclusive to Muslims, but like most of, let's say, the whole global South pretty much is really hospitable. Like, that's what we know. And we have nothing to hide, you know. But I've learned now that no, you shouldn't do that, because when they're coming to like gather intelligence, they're not really learning. They're saying, oh, we want to speak to you. They're really coming at you the way a prosecutor runs a case. If a prosecutor is on a case, their job is to put that person behind bars. They're not listening and like, oh, that's a good point. You know what? Let's just stop it. I changed my mind. They don't care. They got a goal. So FBI agent could come and use anything as evidence against you. They see a prayer rug in your house, that could be evidence to them. You know, we had a family friend who was under intense scrutiny, and they asked his wife, like, yo, when you guys watch movies and there's a sex scene or there's nudity, does he like look away or does he like keep watching? Because of course, if he looks away, then he's more likely to be a terrorist, right? In their eyes, like silly stuff. So I learned to just actually not invite them in. And from my lawyers, they would be like, you know, give them my card and that's that. And they really don't like that. So they started, I'd start seeing them everywhere at the grocery stores and stuff. And people say you're paranoid, but I'm talking about like the same people that were at my house. I would see those people out. But an example, like one time they came to my house, 3 people, and they wanted to ask questions or whatever. I guess long story short, I could give you all the details, but long story short, I gave him the card, talked to the lawyer, blah, blah, blah. They're like, oh, okay, well, that's fine. You know, they named some type of traffic incident, like that they needed to take me in and arrest me for. And we're like, oh, it's a local issue. So if it's a local issue, like with police, why don't the local police come? They're like, all right, so we'll bring the local police. So they take me out to the front. All the neighbors, everybody's outside. They make a big show of it. I'm in handcuffs. We got to wait for the police to show up. And what pulls up? Is it a regular cop car? Nope. It's one of them big old paddy wagons you see like in the movies and stuff, you know. And they put me in there, take me to jail. And then I have court like the next day. And when I go to court, I'm in jail for a while. They ask me all these questions. After a few hours, they let me out. When I go to court, the judge calls me up and he just dismisses the case. So it's like there never was anything solid there. It's just an inconvenience technique. You know what I mean? They just want to kind of break you. And so, that time was hard. Like the time when it all started was we were driving from a friend's wedding in Toronto. And we drove through the border in Michigan. I was in a car. There was like maybe 7 or 8 of us in a car. I had another friend group that was going through the Buffalo border. We got stopped and detained. They got stopped and detained. When I got to the detainment center, I saw another family that I knew there. You know, it's like a joke. And they kept us for 6 hours. No, you know, it's cold. No, can't see the clock. They put me in jail. They had somebody else come take me 2 hours away. It was just all extra. It was a lot. And at that time, especially after talking to my lawyers and stuff, it was like, you just need to, don't make anything worse for you. Don't talk about it. I was using Twitter at the time. Don't tweet. Don't make music. So, you know, I just kind of went ghost. Looking back, I wish I hadn't, because stuff didn't get better for 4 years anyway. And I wish I kind of shared my experiences and stuff then. But it is what it is. And that was just another kind of darker time in my life where it took me a while to get out of it. You were asking me earlier about like growing up around spies and this, and that make you not trustful. And I would say coming out of that, it's not that I didn't trust people, but I just didn't want to talk to anybody or really get close to people. And I'm somebody who's always been cultivating community. Whatever I do, I'm like, I want to cultivate community. I want to reach out to people. I want to host people. And so I was definitely on some like no new friends tip for like a long time, for a few years. And thankfully broke out of that. And now, like, you know, it's hard. I've got friends that we got deep bonds. A lot of us, our parents knew each other before they ever came to this country, and we've been through so much together. And I've got other friends, like 4 or 5 best friends growing up, who eventually became Muslim. And that was like super tight bonding experience that you can't match elsewhere. And I used to think like, oh, what new people are going to bring this stuff into my life? And as I've gotten older, now I make new friends all the time. And sometimes new friends can bring more light into your life than people that know you better. And sometimes they can allow you to be your full self. Sometimes people that you grew up with, family or close friends, you like fall back into the role that they know of you. And if you have new parts of you that you're growing into that are unseen, it can be jarring for them to see that. Sometimes new people in your life can like accept the whole package better. So that's a lot of I came a long ways away from your initial question, but that's where I'm at.
No, it's great. So, can I ask? And you can say you can't answer. It's fine. What were the charges? Just simply being Muslim? What were? Is that
That's a
it?
great question. That's an amazing, amazing question. There was a lawsuit, a class action lawsuit at that time against the United States to answer that exact question. The charges were that there were no charges. So the class action lawsuit was challenging how constitutional it was to put people on the no-fly list without any charges. Because, if you're accused of murder, even if you're innocent, they come and tell you, we think you killed this person on this day with this weapon. Excuse me. So if you're accused of murder, they tell you, we think you killed this person on this day with this weapon. So if you're innocent, you just got to prove that you didn't do that. But if they put you on a no-fly list and they don't tell you why, and there's no explanation, how are you going to fight that? How are you going to prove your innocence? And they're not even cordial about the way they do it. Pre no-fly list, I had something called Quad S. This is 4 S's on your boarding pass. It's called secondary security selectee status. If you look that up, Google definition, this is something reserved for people who are deemed a potential threat to national security. And me and my circle, they're giving these out like hotcakes. Basically, everybody that went to Libya after the revolution, like they got it, right? So even before no-fly list, leading up to it, I used to have to, I couldn't check in online. You go to their gate agent, they have to call, wait 40 minutes. You might get on, you might not. If you get to security, I had to stop taking carry-ons because they'd like go through it and throw away half of it. They do a little fake explosions test, throw it out. Then they have to interrogate you. Then when you get to the plane itself, there's a group of people waiting for you again with your picture. They're going to interrogate you again. They're going to go through your notebook. They're going to go through your cell phone. So I was already going through that stuff before the no-fly list. And then there was a time when I flew from Chicago to Lexington, Kentucky, and I had a connection in Detroit. And on my connecting flight, I went through all the security measures, did everything. I was already on the plane, and someone came up to me after 5 minutes and was like, are you so-and-so? Can I see your license or your ID? I showed it to them like, I'm sorry, sir, but we're going to have to ask you to get off the plane. I'm like, what? No explanation, no nothing. I'm sitting in the front of the plane. So everybody's faces is like, yeah, we got you, sucker. It looks like I did something. And I'm not even in the city that I left from. I'm in a connecting city. You understand? They left me stranded in a connecting city. Luckily, I know people everywhere. I got people everywhere. I was okay. You know what I mean? In fact, my first friend that I called to come get me, he's like, what do you mean that had such and such? I said, I don't know. They wouldn't let me fly. Da-da-da. He was scared that he didn't come. I don't blame him for that. But he's like, nah, bro, you figure that out and then tell me. His brother came and got me after. But can you imagine that? Like, you just leaving somebody stranded in a connecting city that's not even their destination city or the city they left from. Like, y'all should have just done that to me in Chicago. So it's like a very undignified way to be treated. Even the detainment centers and stuff, it's intentionally not dignified. And I'll tell you, at the border, we were there for 6 hours. Like I said, it's freezing cold. Bro, everybody there was a person of color. It was a joke. Like, majority Muslim, Black people. There was a lady, she had to be 75, 80 next to me. She was just shivering. She had little shorts on. I gave her my hoodie, put on her shorts. Like, why is this lady going through this? And the only white people that I saw there were people who, like, legit something happened. Like, oh, we went to Canada with 3 passports and we came back with 2 passports. And they treat them like, oh, don't worry about it. We'll look into this and we'll get it figured out. They were just like super cool. And then with us, like, babies aren't allowed to get their diapers changed. Nobody can have a snack. You got to have permission to use the bathroom. They're searching you against the wall every 20 minutes, even though they just searched you 20 minutes ago and you have nowhere that you could have gone and got a weapon from. So it's very intentional. They really want to break you down. They really want to take away your dignity in terms of the whole process.
And your bank account, too. The lawyers are not cheap.
Yeah, I will say shout out to CARE. For me, I was blessed to have CARE took charge of that lawsuit and for a lot of stuff for me. Thankfully, in that specific situation, I wouldn't have been able to afford a lawyer anyway, so I got to do a little bit with them. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And this is affecting people's livelihoods, right? Like for me, I couldn't make money. I couldn't travel. I couldn't tour. I couldn't go back to Libya. I came back to America. I had just been in Libya for 6 months before. I came back to the States thinking, oh, I'm going to go back, like, because we're going to be living in Libya. Like my generation of people, these first generation Americans who had never been to Libya in our life, we all made a mass exodus and like moved and lived in Libya after the revolution. But I was stuck here. Like it changed the whole trajectory of my life.
Yeah, just for everybody who doesn't know CARE, it just means Council on American Islamic Relations. It's a nonprofit group that supports the Muslim community. They do phenomenal work. So when you're going through this, you've been through a lot at this point, right? I mean, a lot. Just, bro, since you were a baby, you've been through it. You've been going through your family moving and this and that. What's going through your head? How do you reconcile what's happening? Like, I don't want to say it this way, like, can't I catch a break? Because I don't think you're built like that, right? I think you have a different view, obviously, of that. But what was your mind like? What were you feeling there?
Yeah, no, we never thought about it. I never thought like why me and stuff. And like I said, because we grew up around other people that had similar stories to us, you know, and there's always somebody worse. We had I grew up in this masjid, a mosque in Lexington, Kentucky called Masjid Bilal, and it was founded in the 70s by a group of brothers who uh a little history. I don't know if your listeners are familiar with the Nation of Islam. That's what Malcolm X initially was a part of, and Muhammad Ali were a part of. So they kind of went to mainstream Islam. They got their founder, who was known as a prophet, Elijah Muhammad. He had a son called Warith Deen Muhammad. Warith Deen Muhammad was the chosen successor, and when he got older, he left his father's the house his father built, and became mainstream Muslim, and a lot of especially African American Muslims became mainstream Muslim at that time. And so these brothers built a masjid in Lexington, Kentucky, and that's the masjid that we grew up and were part of. And so Brother Shaheed, since I was little, the gentleman who founded the masjid, used to always say these parts of the Quran after every talk that he gave. And, a portion of that was like, on no soul does Allah place a burden greater than it can bear. I've known that sentence since I was my whole life, so I never ever thought that anything was given to us more than what we can handle. And I don't know, we just weren't built like that. Like we didn't grow up thinking about what was me and why is me. Is just kind of whiny and maybe like self-centered. So yeah, it just wasn't a part of our upbringing.
So when it ended and CARE kind of jumped in, and I'm assuming it was dismissed or you won the case. I don't know what the correct phrasing is there, but how did you feel after? What did you think you were going to do next?
Well, there wasn't like a concrete ending, or like it's not like it had, it's years, it's 4 years, and I never had a moment that was like, oh, you're off the no-fly list. They don't tell you. They don't even confirm to you that you're on and off and blah blah blah. But there was one time where these cops in Chicago came to the house, and they weren't FBI. They were like local law enforcement. They're like with terrorism task force, and now we all work together. And da da da. I was like, guys, this is silly. But like, no, of course they're playing like, oh, I follow your Twitter. I'm really interested, and I saw the Sing Freedom clip. I'd love to watch the movie if you send it to me, and da 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 da. But I just remember telling them, like, guys, this is real silly. Like, it's silly. Like, y'all just wasting money. It's real silly. I have a friend who also went through the border situation with me, and he's like, y'all are wasting all this time. Like, he's like, I want to go home and play PlayStation. Like, y'all really wasting time on these silly matters. And I always think about that, like, for real. But something about that visit was a little different. I spoke to the lawyer, and she's like, I don't know, maybe you should try. He's like, we're going to get you off, is what he told me, or something. So I tried flying. I think I booked like a little short, cheap flight, and I was able to get on, and that was that, but there was never like this moment of, there's no like winning moment. There's no bag. We didn't get paid or nothing like that. It is what it is, and we move on, and, there's no reparations or something. People of color in America have been wronged by the government decades and decades, and you just got to keep pushing.
Yeah, and I asked you earlier, I'm not going to keep asking you the same question in a different way, but are you going to write about this at some point as a book or something?
I don't know. Um, I used to speak about it online, and sometimes it can come off, I'm saying, we're not woe is me. Like, my intention of sharing this is just to know what people are going through. I'm not the guy on the no-fly list. There's hundreds of thousands of people. But I always have a problem navigating sharing something about my life or coming off like I'm trying to center myself or like magnify my own personal experience. And I know, like, our culture is the opposite. Like, you're supposed to do that. And you're supposed to share everything and tell everything. And America loves ego, ego, ego. Um, so I don't know. I wrote a play. I wrote a musical play about it where, like, I'm rapping all the scenes of what happens with my band because I love these kind of shows. I used to have a show called The Long Way Home, which is a storytelling concert. And so I started writing the bulk of a play about it, another project that I didn't finish. And now looking back, like, I don't know, it's just writing about my father's story. I can do that because it's about somebody else. But writing something about yourself is, I'm gonna have to navigate my feelings about that.
All right, I won't nag you about that one then. It's all good. But speaking of your experience growing up in America, speaking of the experience of being on a no-fly list, talk to me about X-Men.
um, it's funny. They just made a remake of the cartoon. It's called X-Men '97, and the writer for that show was actually the writer of the new X-Men '97 show was fired after writing the whole show. They said it was because of some shady OnlyFans he had or something like that. But my man was retweeting stuff about Palestine. It happened at the same time. Who knows? Um, but for me, X-Men growing up was just like an allegory. It was just so relatable to our upbringing. And you saw these people who were dignified, who lived good lives, who wanted to do good in the world, and they were vilified by the media. They were vilified by the government. And Asada Shakur, in her autobiography, says something really powerful and relevant. She says that throughout its history, the government and the media, as an arm of the government, will vilify people. And in her case, she's talking about the Black Panther Party. And she said they will vilify people. And what that does is make the public not hate them, but fearful of them. Fearful is more, to be fearful of someone will make you more likely to be tolerant of injustices towards them. So they will vilify people, the government and media, so that when the government comes and commits injustices against them, there isn't a lot of pushback or resistance from the general public. So they did that with the Black Panthers. That's what they did on X-Men. That's what my upbringing was, with the Muslim community. That's what we're seeing today in Palestine. And so I think people that come from oppressed communities, if you watch the X-Men, and you have a lot to learn, because also on X-Men, sometimes there are mutants who are resisting and fighting back, who are choosing, violence after being oppressed. And we have to navigate that too, because now that's on TV. But then also on X-Men, there's false flags that are created by the government or created by people who don't want mutants to do well, like these people that we're seeing today, for example, these protesters that are cosplaying as Palestinian, and they're not Palestinian, but they want to make Palestinians look a certain way. So, it changed my life, bro. I was like maybe in third grade or something when I was exposed to X-Men, and I couldn't watch kid cartoons or shows again after that. Like the first episode, one of the good guys dies. It wasn't like these corny, like, Power Rangers. It was like every episode, good guy, bad guy. Then they get big at the end. I'm like, why don't they just get big at the beginning and like step on the dude and just end the episode? It should be 3 minutes. But this was like nuance, and even within the good guys, there's a spectrum, and some of them don't get along. Some of them don't like each other. Some of them have different philosophies. There's a lot of nuance. It's real. It related to real life, and it always just kind of spoke to me deeply.
Who's the bald guy on X-Men?
Is this a sincere
No, I
question?
don't know the name. Yeah, I don't remember the name. I had it. I blanked out because I was, I forgot the name.
His name is Professor X. His name is Professor
Okay.
X. There's another big figure named Magneto. People like to liken them to Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. I don't like that. I think it's a super simplification, because Malcolm X, Magneto would use violence at times. Malcolm X actually wasn't violent. That's just, again, the government and media's portrayal. Malcolm X wasn't out here just like shooting up buildings. Like, what did he do that was violent during his life? You know, he did say resistance by any means necessary, and these things will happen, but like, he didn't kill anybody. Malcolm X didn't attack a school or something like that. So I don't even like the Malcolm X Magneto comparison, but you know, these are examples that we see taken from real life.
Yeah, and Wise just sent me a message, Professor Xavier, and I could tell he's just like rolling his eyes at me that I forgot that. But yeah, but the reason I was asking, because you know, when my kids ran across it, because I'm bald, they're like, "Oh, you're on TV." So my segue there, really, for you is which character are you on X-Men?
Oh man, I always related. There's a character on there. His name's Gambit. He's like a Cajun dude. He's kind of suave, a little bit bad boy doing his own thing. A little bit he's down for the cause, but he reminded me of myself a lot when I was younger. Doesn't really follow the rules. His ultimate goal is the same, but he's going to do it his way and have a little fun along the way. So I always like Gambit. That was my favorite.
All right, right on. Again, that's just, you know, it's an amazing perspective that I never thought about. So I do appreciate you kind of making me look at that a little bit differently. Because right now, you, me, anybody in that region, we're X-Men, if you think about it, the way we're being treated, generally speaking.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I think that's pretty powerful. So you did a tour and you went to Qatar, and
hmm
you repped the Libyan outfit perfectly, and
hmm
you did your thing. Can you talk about that experience and that concert? It was at a concert or I'm not sure what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Qatar was a phenomenal experience, and it was responsible for one of the highest highs and one of the lowest lows in my career. And I've never said this out loud publicly about an eventual regret that I had. But the experience of going to Qatar and putting the band together, that was my first show where I had my own band, which is what we use now. Like, I'm always playing with the band. If you see me live, I'm with the band. I started playing. There's a group called Bastard and the Supernaturals, Basil Syrian American, a bunch of other really dope American, white American people in the band, and we had toured together. And so once they started playing my songs, I was like, "Yo, this is dope!" Like, I like playing with the live band, and I had learned at a young age from Tech Nine. He is a rapper that is from Kansas City, and his live show is just famous, and his crowd is he's somebody that might not be a household name, but people who listen to him, he's like their favorite rapper. They go city to city to follow him. And he taught me a lot about being an independent artist. You got like 1,000 items in his name. You can buy a PlayStation controller or lingerie or whatever. Like, he makes really good money. Um, and so I always cared about the live show. So shout out Bass and Supernaturals. When we went to Qatar, that was my first time putting together my band, our band that we still use. And for some of them, that was their first time leaving America. And this is stuff that I love. And we've left America a few times now. And I love this part of being a musician. I love the bonds that I build with these band members, and I love being able to share these experiences, you know. And two of my bandmates at the time, from the South Side Chicago, and I remember one of them hit me up before going to Qatar. It's like, "Hey man, KM, we just wanted to talk to you, man. And we just wondering, like, is it gonna be safe over there?" I'm like, "Safe, bro? You from the South Side? Like, you could leave your car running in Qatar. Nobody's gonna come in your car. Like, it's safe. I got you. Don't worry, we good." And so when they went there, and we went for Ijal Film Festival. It's a film festival, but every year they have it. The opening night, there's a guest musician. So I was the guest musician that opened the festival the Thursday night, and then you got Friday, Saturday film. But they were looking around at the skyscrapers and the architecture and the beautiful restaurants. We were all, America loves to center itself. Like, it's the greatest at everything. Like, our experiences there were killing America, right? And they just kept saying, like, "Man, we've been lied to our whole life. Like, we've been lied to our whole life. And like, these people are not the way we've been taught about them." You know what I'm saying? And when he says these people, he's just talking about the region in general. Like he thought they're just living in tents in the desert, right? But the show was amazing. People were phenomenal. I had a wonderful time. So fast forward to one of my lows I told you to tell you about. I'm not somebody that really has regrets a lot. But when World Cup time came around and we had built such a good kind of following there, we had been in touch about the World Cup forever. I even recorded a song specifically for the World Cup that I was going to unveil during my performance there. But I was thinking back to like our experience, and I was like, yo, they dropped a lot of money on us. Like they paid me okay, right? So I'm grateful. But then when I'm thinking about like all the flights, the whole band, managers, we're staying at the St. Regis Hotel. It's like 7-star hotel. You get to the room, there's a menu on the bed. It's like a pillow menu with 50 different pillows. And the brunch that we had every day, people come and pay $400. And the vouchers, they'd give us $600 worth of vouchers every day. So I'm just like, yo, they spent a lot of money. So if I'm going to perform at the World Cup, like it's got to be a bag. And I gave them a high number, I'm not going to lie. And I was just like, you know, the stuff we're taught in the United States, it's a very like self-centered culture. They always build you up and like know your value and da-da-da. So I don't know what I was on, but I'm like, yo, they're going to pay me my worth. And you know, I my worth was less than that. Like I could have took less than that. I've done less than that for shows, you know, but I was just on some like calculating how much they spent last time, right? And so they didn't meet that number, and I stood firm, and I was really proud of myself for sticking to my number. You know, half a year later, World Cup comes and Senegal's there. I've spent time in Senegal, and I had a Senegalese artist on this track. I got a Moroccan artist. Morocco's doing their thing. I also felt like I wanted to defend the existence of the World Cup because all these Westerners were being really hypocritical, attacking it. And it really was my first big regret. And it put me in a dark place not being there to wear it. That kind of pushed me away from even being on social media because I just didn't want to see what was going on. And it took me a good chunk of time to really like man up and get over my feelings and being like, all right, man, keep it moving. And I've never had that my whole career. I've never actually like regretted something. That was my first real regret, was not just taking a contract and playing in the World Cup and putting out that song. I think I was on some, you know,
It was a learning experience. I mean,
it was a learning experience for
yeah.
sure. It was a learning experience. But it was amazing out there. You know, it was amazing. I can't lie. It was a phenomenal production. There's some cultural things to get around. I remember when I was doing sound check there, you know, in the Gulf region, I'm assuming you've probably been out there to Qatar or Dubai or something. It's very like VIP-ish, right? Everybody wants the VIP. Like at the film festival, you're gonna see every VIP on the red carpet. Even if they don't care about films, they just want to be seen. And I was doing rehearsal, and the way they had it set up was the VIP was in the front, and then the crowd was behind the VIP. And they literally came up to me during rehearsal, like, "Yo, can we turn the speakers down a little bit? It's really loud for the VIP." And I'm like, you know, thankfully I don't have to have these conversations like management and stuff had it, but like, nah, like that's crazy. And we came up with the plan together, and they moved the VIP to put them behind the audience, and they can still feel special and do their thing, but we can keep the music at the same volume and keep it popping, and the people are standing up and the crowd is doing their thing. So it was cool. It was a dope experience.
You know, I've never been to Qatar. I've only been to Palestine, but my wife has a connection to Qatar, and she's been trying to get me to move out there. Haven't figured out how to do that, to be honest, I'm not looking on how to do that. But that's one of her dreams. But I'm told it's beautiful and it's safe.
Yeah, and again, I'm not here to like cape for any specific nation or government or anything. You know, my main point isn't that Qatar is better than everywhere else. It's just that we are in America embedded. When I think about the songs that we sing in elementary school, I used to be singing, "You're a grand old flag, you're a high flying flag in America," and all the stuff. It's like, bro, there's a whole world out there. We are not the best at everything. There's other places that are cleaner, that have also skyscrapers, that have entertainment, that have good food. And so, you know, we're really narcissistic. We're really oblivious to the rest of the world. So my only point is there are countries and there are cities in every continent, in Africa and in South America and in the Middle East and East Asia, that are doing the damn thing and that we can learn a lot from.
So speaking of that and sort of the mental model here in America, what advice would you give the future artists that are within our community, right? Libyan, Palestinian, whatever it may be, who want to speak up, who have this sort of artistic urge, but just don't know how to let it out? What advice do you have for them, other than don't overcharge for something like a concert?
No, my advice, period, is just be your authentic self. Tell your story. You have a story. Everybody has a story. It doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't have to be about your father escaping jail and stuff, but you've had emotions, you've had experiences in your life. Nobody else has your story. So just tell your story. If you're just going to rap about how much money you have, I'll just listen to, like, Jay-Z has more money than you. If that's what I listen to, I'm going to listen to somebody that actually has more money. Like, why am I going to listen to this 16-year-old dude who lives in his mom's house talk about how much money he got? Like, tell your story. And I remember when they Can't Take Our Freedom days, I had artists that were hitting me up from Libya, and they'd show me their songs, and they'd like, some of them were talented, but they'd be like, I'm in the club, I'm da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, bro, there's no clubs up there. Like, you're not in the club. And your story, I guarantee you, is actually more interesting and more engaging than this like generic story that you think falls into the realm of hip hop. Hip hop doesn't live in any box. Hip hop is a medium, and hip hop is just a medium of storytelling, and that goes for any creative art form, whether you're trying to write films or whether you're trying to write TV shows or write a different genre of music. Like, it's just a medium. You don't have to follow any script. You know, we're seeing that now. Like, you know, I don't know if you've ever seen the show Atlanta, but like Donald Glover is not from that world, and the director of the show is like a music video director. So they're just making it up as they go along. They don't have to follow. Like, they got mad plot holes. They got like cliffhangers. They're like, the first episode, dude's like accused of murder, and then they just never address it because they don't give a damn. They're just making whatever the hell they want to make. So my first thing is like, just be authentic and tell your story, period.
So just a few more questions. Speaking about the younger generation, if you had a chance to tell your younger self something, what would you say to your younger self?
Oh man.
Don't,
You got me.
don't worry about it. Everybody gets gotten on this one, but
Yeah. Um, Man, honestly, that's a very, 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 very deep question. I would say more than anything, whatever it is, whether it's professional things, personal growth, school, I would probably tell myself to just not procrastinate. That's been like my overarching like flaw of my life, of procrastinating or not finishing stuff, or not to be a perfectionist, to just do stuff and just do things and get it done, and you probably speed up your timeline. I'm not saying I have regrets because everything happens the way it's supposed to happen. There was a time when I was really, really young and I was in my teens and I had record label offers, and I didn't really care, and I didn't like take that. And sometimes I think back and I'm like, yo, why didn't I like take that? Or that would have been a bad, because I grew up, my uncles, they were young at the time. They were like 22, 23, but they were managers of this clothing store called Bernini that had like a bunch of locations back in the day. And it was like really high end suits. Made a lot of relationships. So my uncles used to kick it with DMX and Suge Knight and, you know, whoever, Magic Johnson and stuff. So I got in front of like certain people. I had opportunities, but I was really indifferent. I didn't care about any of that back then. Um, And so sometimes I'm like, yo, what if I had done ABC? But maybe it would have put me on a different life trajectory, and I probably would have been too young to handle some of the stuff in the industry. Like right now in the industry that I'm in, I'm very comfortable with myself and who I am and what my boundaries are and what type of person I want to be. There's a lot of pressures and there's a lot of things that you become numb to because you're just surrounded in it. The music world, even if you see these artists that are like super positive artists, their lifestyle is often not a healthy lifestyle. You know, like things they're consuming and stuff is prevalent, and self-medicating and pills and whatever. So maybe I wasn't ready for it at that time. So I'm not saying it in the sense that I have regrets, but in general, I probably would have told myself to not be a perfectionist and just like complete the things you want to do and don't put stuff off for later.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's extremely meaningful, and I appreciate that because I think it speaks to today for a lot of people, right? What they're going through. I'm sure somebody that's going to listen to the podcast is going to say, "Wow, that's me right now. Maybe I should pivot, right, or do something else in life." So I appreciate that. So, what do you want your legacy to be? 30, 50, 70 years, 80 years from now, whatever it may be. What do you want your legacy to be?
Um, Man, I just want to leave a positive enough impact that people are still like praying for me, and that I've done enough positivity that I'm getting like rewards and good deeds for things I've done like while I'm on this earth. Um, so I can't say I care about legacy goals in terms of like measurable success or music or fame or anything like that, but I'm just hoping that that I can make enough positive impact on people where they're thinking about me and maybe doing something positive on my behalf or in my name or with me in their thoughts after I'm gone.
I gotcha. Well, for what it's worth, you've had a positive impact on me, and this is our first time having a full
Nah, come on,
conversation.
man.
Nah, for real, I appreciate it.
Very nice of
And you're
you,
talking
man.
about industry. I believe for you, and this is me saying it, it's not you saying it. I think you're going to build your own industry. I think that's going to come up for
Hmm.
you, and you're
I,
going to
I need
reap.
I need an accountability, brother.
There you go. I got you. I got you. So so you mentioned merchandise really quick by Tech Nine, right? And so talk about future maybe work that you're doing. Any merchandise? What kind of merchandise maybe you thought of from Tech Nine, for example, that you're actually putting out there?
It's funny you ask about merch because I've always had merchandise. I've always had merchandise that I think is really dope because I don't want to just a regular T-shirt that's screen printed. Like I always cared about my quality and everything, but I never sold stuff online. I always kept my merch to my shows. I always kept that. And it's like kind of silly. I don't know why I've been like that and why I'm always reserving everything for just the in-person experience. It's a really old school way of doing stuff and it's not a sustainable, like it's not a good business model. I just care about the art so much and I think that experience is cool. And coming back to how what I was doing before was relevant to now, like my main dope merch shirt that was like the best seller um, was a shirt that came out like 2018 and it said like the revolution will be live streamed. It was a play on the old phrase like the revolution will not be televised, and like that's what we're seeing play out now. And so I've thought about like bringing it back and selling it and just donating the proceeds and stuff. But with merch, we always want to be creative and fresh. When I dropped Medlock Road, the chorus says it all started on Medlock, and so we had these shirts that said it all started on, and then there's like an empty line, and you fill in. They were like customizable, and you fill in, or it all started, and it might not be a street name. It might be it all started on February 7th, 2005, or it all started in my friend's basement, or it all started at Valley High School, or whatever. Each person would make it personal to them. So I always like for the merch to be something that's not just like the artist's name and they're just buying something with his name. I want it to be something that's like a connection that really helps the person kind of, build their own story. But I've got a gang of music I'm sitting on. I have Sing Freedom, the documentary that followed me to Libya for the first time. I met my family for the first time, went to the jails that my uncles were at for the first time, caught the most vulnerable moments of my life. So I'll be putting that out sometime this year. And like I said, once the time feels appropriate, I'm just releasing something like every week. It's gonna be crazy. Like once the door opens, it's gonna be wide open,
I
inshallah.
mean,
And stay tuned.
inshallah, do you have anything that you could put out related to today's world and what's happening in the world that maybe could wake people up or inspire?
Man, I've had so many requests to uh, re-release "Can't Take Our Freedom." That song "Can't Take Our Freedom," when we first put it out, what happened naturally, this was another learning lesson for me, is people started, the lyrics were could apply to a lot of situations about oppression. But the video, we took footage from what was going on in Libya and blasted it because we wanted people to see. And people started making their own versions of the music video. I had kids in Palestine, I had kids in Sierra Leone, I had kids in like Baltimore and like different places that were like making their own videos to the song, and it was big. It was a big thing on YouTube. And when the song dropped, it was like, you know, YouTube tweeted about it because it was big. It came out. It's old enough where it came out on Hulk Share, and Hulk Share website was you know, crashed. I didn't want to sell it. Looking back, like I wish I put it on, you know, Apple Music when it first dropped. Like I've learned now it's okay to like make $1 from your music, especially if it's sincere. I wish I had done that, but a learning lesson was I requested for all the people that created other videos to like take them down because I wanted to drive traffic to our video. And there was a day where we were on front page of CNN. It was Tuesday. They had saved this article for Tuesday, which was their biggest news day, front page. And the day that we were on front page CNN, YouTube took down our video for like graphic content or whatever. And so like all those views and stuff were all lost. Everybody had their deleted stuff lost. My stuff lost. And now I realize it doesn't really matter if the views are coming on my page or somebody else's page. It's all just like awareness. I got lost. I don't even remember where I was going with all this. But
maybe,
can't take our freedom. So
yeah.
a lot of requests, even from friends of mine whose families are from Gaza. They're like, yo, that song meant a lot, and you know, you should re-release it, like a Gaza version. And I never wanted to do stuff before where I'm just chasing. Like I know artists, I'm not gonna lie, that just chase every like tragedy. You know, like here's a Trayvon Martin song, here's a Syria Revolution song, here's a da 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 da. Like I don't ever want to be that guy. But it's something that like I feel I can't take our freedom really captured a specific sound that I'm not seeing. A lot of stuff that I'm seeing now is like either informational or jovial. You see Hens Hall is getting played a lot, like the Macklemore joint, and that's cool, but it's like a different kind of feel than this. So I've played with that, but I don't know if I just want to be the guy that's like making songs about tragedies, even though it would be sincere and from the heart. So I've thought about it, but you know, we'll see. If it happens organically, it'll happen organically. But to the point about Macklemore, remember I said be yourself and be authentic? We're seeing now so many artists are scared to speak up and speak out. But I promise you, as much institutional money as you lose, you're going to gain that many more fans. And Macklemore just hit #2 on the Billboard chart, and he's behind Kendrick Lamar's Not Like Us, which was the biggest song of all time on the hip hop, you know, Billboard chart. So don't be scared to speak. There's an audience for that, and it doesn't matter. We're not in an age where we need record labels and this stuff anymore. Independent artists are as powerful as ever.
So you mentioned you'd put it out again organically. Does organically mean me requesting you put it out again with a new spin to it? Does that count, or how does that work?
So organically means if I write something new, it would have to feel like natural and not like deliberate. And then I've thought about re-releasing Can't Take Our Freedom. If I took like the first half of the original song, if I took the first half of my first verse and the second half of my second verse and put them together, then it would kind of apply to the situation today. But I don't really want to do it unless there's a Palestinian artist on the song. So it'd just be about maybe finding the right Palestinian artist that fits that we can also organically have a relationship and build with.
So Wahib Nassan is the I don't know if you've got to listen to the opening of the podcast.
I know Wahib. Yeah.
Oh yeah. He did the opening for the podcast, like the beat for the podcast. So.
Yeah, Wahib's good people, bro, and I know him because he's from Chicago too. He's definitely reps super hard. He's good people. I see you. Look at you. You're trying to make stuff organic. I got it.
There you go. See. I mean, I'll call him right now for you. We'll make it happen. I'll sponsor it.
I got Wahib on the line.
Yeah.
Hey, I like that.
I appreciate you so much. Thank you for taking the time. I know you have a crazy schedule, a lot of traveling. So I do appreciate you. It means a lot. And thank you for dropping so much knowledge with us today.
Yo, phenomenal. And sometimes these podcasts feel like work or something you got to do. This was super dope, organic, natural. Like you said, just we're having coffee. I feel like I'm just talking to a brother. And it's crazy because this was unplanned, but I'm driving to Cali, and Tucson, Arizona is on the way, and I made a pit stop, and this is where I was born, even though I don't have a recollection of it. And we're talking a lot about upbringing. So it really kind of feels like full circle energy in here right now.
That's right on. Well, if you come to DC, hopefully you'll do a concert or something in DC, but maybe we do another round and we'll do it face to face in person, if that's cool with you.
Man, I would love that. I would love
All right.
that for sure, brother. I appreciate that.
I appreciate you. Have a good one.
You too.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time zone you're living in, it's time for Sumud. All about humanity, so this right here for everyone. Uplift, amplify, empower everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time zone you're living in, it's time for Sumud. Listen, stay tuned, cause it's time for Sumud.